to your mouth just because you are a quieter talker.
Yes, I
am. But honestly, it's super cash. I like to keep things casual. Like my last guest, he spilled his water all over down here.
Oh, good.
And that doesn't faze me at all.
Right? So you're loading it up.
I am.
Are you like, energy-wise, you're good to...
Energy-wise, I'm totally good.
You're amazing.
Yeah.
Because I would be drained.
I've been really looking forward to our conversation.
Cool.
So I think that's also maybe pushing my energy.
Got it.
But no, I was thinking, let me get into your bio really fast.
Okay.
So Ian Sohn, that's how you pronounce your last name, correct?
Sohn, yeah,
Sohn.
like phone or stone.
Ian Sohn is a sports enthusiast, loves being active, exploring the outdoors, and is living his life to the fullest since surviving a stroke 8 years ago. He currently lives remote in a van with his wife and 3 cats.
Yeah.
Does that sum it up pretty good?
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah, it sounds more interesting than I feel like it is, but yeah. That is it.
Well, life is ever changing. I feel like my short bio changes by the month, so.
True. Yeah, no, it does change fast, so. But yeah, no, that's it. That's me.
Cool. I'm happy to have you. We know how we met, so I'm going to share. You reached out to me on LinkedIn. I was in open for opportunities or something.
Yeah, you're looking for something.
Yeah, and you gave me a pitch, and I was like, you know what? I have nothing to lose, so let's hear it. And I'm not into finance things, so it wasn't for me.
Sure.
But we connected on a different level.
Totally different, and it was good.
And I was so surprised, but I shouldn't be surprised because I feel like I meet people that I'm supposed to meet all the time now because I'm so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think you were just kind of like, well, what's going on? What's in your life? What's your status? And I was just like, oh, buckle up or something like that. And then I think I just kind of realized I had nothing to lose. So I might as well tell this guy what my story is. And it does involve being limb different. And you were like, wait a second. Tell me more about that. And also when I started talking, then tell me your perspective, I guess we should say.
Yeah. I think just some of the things you said I could totally resonate with in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, similar. And I think that's where the connection, like that instant connection.
Yeah, instant friendship, honestly.
Yeah, seriously. And
this is the first time we're meeting in person.
Which is wild because I feel like I have known you to a degree. But yeah, and just felt like, okay, there's a huge, on a very deep level, something very relatable. And just what you've lived and experienced and everything. So anyway, but I want to say thank you for having me on here. Like I heard your first episode, and like I was just saying, there's things that you have said or did say in there, just because you've been living with this life for 27 years, and I've only been living it for 8.
Right.
Where you express them in a way I was like, man, I've felt that, but I haven't known how to exactly express it or say it.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. Oh, there were so many. Like one, you said you were very grateful for people that were patient with you, or patient to allow you to figure things out, like the tying your shoes. And for me, I'm like, man, that is
cutting my steak.
Using scissors, figuring those things out. Like they let you struggle and figure them out, but they were patient enough to just observe or help if you needed it or something. I was like, yes, that is everything. And like I've felt that, but I haven't even thought how to put it into words. But I was like, oh my gosh, that was great.
Yeah, so. I feel like with most of the things I try to articulate, they come from lyrics because I don't find myself to be particularly, here I go, giving an example, articulate. You know what I mean? And so I feel like the ways I am able to articulate myself come from other sources that I've held on to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I feel like growing up, this is kind of a silly example, but it's popping into my head, so I'll share it. Listening to Across the Universe soundtrack on repeat, right? On my iPod Nano or something. But I remember the song that stuck out to me the most was I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles.
Yeah.
Kind of cliche, but like obviously as a young child, I saw all these people holding hands and that being like something I wanted for myself.
Yeah.
So I connected with that. And then I feel like the more I share my story, the more I'm able to come up with like these more impactful one-liners, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm glad that you were able to feel seen by that, because I do think even though our situations are very different, we have experienced a lot of the same things or frustrations, especially when it comes to interacting with ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Do you want to share the story of?
Yeah. So a little backstory. Growing up and through childhood and even through college, like I was super active. Sports are everything. Being able to, excel in that way that was kind of my identity as a human.
Yeah.
And had been married about 9 months, and my wife's family always goes to Lake Powell, which is a huge destination to do recreation.
Yeah,
so
big boating.
Houseboats. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were tubing on the lake, which is super normal. It's something I'd grown up doing in my life, and I would when I was younger, bear hug the tubes and do a barrel roll and try and land upright in the water. So I was probably stupidly active on the tube and aggressive and
well, I think that's our culture here. We have so many reservoirs and lakes that people grow up boating.
Oh my gosh.
And so there's that sort of comfort.
Yeah.
Because so many people are doing it, I think.
Yeah. And so it's just normal. But in this time I went through a little wake and I got bounced off the tube, which is kind of the goal of tubing, is to end up in the water.
Right.
But I landed just perfectly flat on my back. And it gave me whiplash, and it tore an artery in my neck, which is called the vertebral artery. So your arteries have 3 linings, and the innermost lining is what tore. And anytime there's turbulence in your blood system, it's going to clot.
Okay.
And so that was July 10th, and then August 7th, so almost a month later, I went to work at BYU at the time, rode my bike in, and instantly, once I got to work and sat down in my station, my vision was choppy almost, it was seeing in frame. So if you pan from one side to the other, it's fluid, but it was frame by frame.
Interesting.
It's oh, that's weird. And started feeling nauseous and asked to go to the bathroom and threw up, sorry.
No.
And as soon as I threw up, instantly that triggered it. I just started getting tingly from the bottom of my foot up to about my chin. And something was wrong, obviously. And at the time at BYU, I was studying neuroscience, ironically.
Wow.
And had literally just taken a clinical anatomy course, and one of the units was on stroke. And so it didn't present itself as a typical stroke, because there was no face droop. I didn't have the complete weakness at that point. But it was so unilateral and perfectly down my midline. I was that's weird. That, I wonder if that's it. And then
how serendipitous that you had just had
right?
that knowledge basically funneled into your head.
Crazy. And so there's an acronym with strokes. If I can pull a plug out there, it's FAST. So when you're identifying strokes, so educational moment.
Yeah,
if you're
please.
identifying a stroke, F stands for face droop. So anytime someone has a unilateral face issue, that could be a sign of a stroke. A stands for arm. So if there's any arm impairment on that one side, that's another thing.
Either side or typically the
either
same
side.
Okay.
Either side. Oh, sorry. Same as the face.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So it all usually happens
It's all
on
gonna be
the
on one
same.
side. Yeah.
Okay.
And it could be left, could be right. But yeah, it's all going to happen on the same. For me, it was the right side. And so that's the A in FAST. The S is speech. So someone's speech starts to slur. Naturally, that's how I've always mumbled and stuff in life. So that's, yeah.
So you're I can't really tell this.
No, yeah, I'm just normal here. And then the T is time, because what happens in a stroke is just essentially the blood flow is impacted. Blood flow to your brain, is impacted, and so you're lacking oxygen. So some strokes can be a bleed on the brain, so it's not proper blood flow, or it can be an impairment of the blood, and that's happened to me. Is the turbulence in that vertebral artery caused the clot, which caused a lack of blood flow to go to my brainstem, and so the blood wasn't getting there.
Right.
And so as soon as that happens, brain cells die almost instantly. It's within, I can't remember if it's within seconds or microseconds. Anyway, so
brain damage happens fast.
Oh my gosh, incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And it's it's unfortunate, but time is essential.
Right.
And so that is one thing that I did recognize. And so I called my wife. She came and got me and went to the ER. So I was at the ER, which is really close to the campus there, luckily. So I got there in time, but getting there, that's the other thing. Strokes, they can present themselves. Sometimes they look like a severe migraine. And so it's just important to get checked out if those signs of FAST are.
Be sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, got there and they had 2 MRI machines, which is like the ultimate way to detect if something's going on. One was down and one was in use. And so we got a CAT scan done, which isn't super clear, but it basically can show, it's called an angiogram. It can
Better
show
than nothing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so with the vertebral arteries, you got one on each side of your neck going up into the brain. And one is usually a little smaller than the other. And so my right one was super prominent and obvious. And then my left one wasn't really obvious and really faint. So I thought, there could be something there. Or it may just be, I don't know, just a normal vein that's not super prominent on our imaging. Right. And so they said, well, here's what we got to do. We got to decide. Because if it is, we need to take care of it now because of the time. Or we're just going to let it happen. So they presented this chart to my wife and I. And it's for a medicine called TPA, tissue plasminogen activator. And this chart shows 100 stick figures. And like 90 of them are just green and good. 90 of them are white. 5 of them are green. And then 5 of them are red. And so the green means it could totally reverse the sign of the stroke and you're 100% back to normal. The white means it'll just kind of be as is, but there's no additional progression of the stroke.
Stop it where it is.
Yeah. And then the red means it's fatal. Because if you're bleeding out and the tissue plasminogen activator, what it does, the TPA is essentially a clot buster, so it's going to increase the blood flow. And so if I take that and I'm having a bleed on my brain, I'm going to bleed out.
Yeah.
But they didn't know. So like, well, what do you want to do?
Those are scary odds.
My wife of 9 months, it's just kind of
Buckle up.
intense. Yeah. And then just asked the doctor, like, if I were your son, what would you do? And she said, just take the TPA. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Took the TPA. Luckily, it wasn't hemorrhagic. It was an ischemic stroke, so there was a clot that needed to be busted. And then with TPA, anytime you take it or have it administered, you have to be admitted to the ER for monitoring for
right.
I think it's 48 hours. And then I was admitted to the ICU, and that's where my condition really declined. Going into the ER, I had full strength, full coordination. I could do like the finger to nose test, no problem. It was just tingly. Sensation was off. But after being admitted to the ICU, that night and into the next day, I lost everything on the right side. My speech was affected. So the stroke kind of stopped at my chin and went diagonally up to like the corner of my head, the crown of my head.
Okay.
And so some of my tongue muscles and throat didn't work properly. So like looking back on videos, I am not intelligible at all. Like you can't hear me. You can't understand, make sense of it. But I thought I was speaking clearly. And but I lost complete function of my arm and hand, like 100% gone. Could not use my leg. Even the trunk muscles were odd and like sitting up and stuff. So they put me in Trendelenburg position, which is like a negative 20-30 degrees, so that my head was like downhill essentially, so to increase the blood flow.
Okay.
To get increased perfusion of blood, so the blood's rushing through my head.
Yeah.
And I was in that for 2 days, and then after that I kind of started to right the ship, and things started coming back. Speech came back pretty quickly, and then I got in the ICU physical therapy for a week, and then I got transferred to an inpatient physical therapy for 2 weeks, and then and then I guess the effects today, I try to hide it a lot, and I don't think most people notice. If they do, they just think like maybe there's an injury, like I messed up my knee or something like that. But my hand's always in my pocket, which actually you said on your episode as well, like don't wear pants with pockets. I was like, oh, that's genius, and I wish I would have done that from day one. But yeah, that was another thing.
It's hard. You almost have to, especially as an adult, right? So, like, luckily I had my parents conditioning me as a child with some positive behaviors. But I find myself as an adult taking the comfortable route a lot of times. And it wasn't until I was in college that I actually, like, put myself through, like, a self-set-up exposure therapy course. And
that's awesome.
That did help. And I think it surprised me how much it helped.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think it was? I guess it's more you, internal. It's just your perception of people, or?
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing it at that caliber, like I was walking around downtown LA every single day.
Right.
And there's so many people on
you're
the
at school,
streets.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you get exposed to so much so fast that I think it was really only uncomfortable for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like the one-off instances after that were like, oh, that person's just an idiot. So, do you know what I mean? Like, they are so unaware that what they said could have been harmful that like, I just need to move on.
You just gotta forget.
And you kind of I just got better at managing people and managing myself, because I am such a fiery person, and I come from a fiery family, and we snap back quite a bit, but I kind of had to train myself to be like, okay, much more empathetic from other people's perspective, try to put myself in their shoes and be like, again, like what I said to you earlier, I'm like, I feel like I've never known anyone on a friend level where I'm interacting with them, where I'm the one that could potentially be helping them. I feel like I'm always the person needing help. Yeah. And it's a new perspective for me, and it's uncomfortable.
Really?
From it's because it's so new.
Okay. So it's just different. And not that
it's so, like...
That's interesting.
I thought...
It's kind of funny,
I thought I would be better at it, I guess. And so I'm like, why do you suck at this, Chelsea? Like, why... Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's the little things that I'm getting hung up on that really, like, you've already told me don't matter. Like, you said, hey, like, you already checked about accommodations. I'm fine. I don't need them. Yeah. And you probably would have put them in the comments or concerns section if you did need them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, I think I'm being overly sensitive because I think, but also that's what I kind of want for myself.
Huh. Interesting.
In a way.
So would you say you're projecting it on you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm projecting onto you 100%.
That's good to know, though, because I am, in my life so far, well, since the stroke, there haven't been many people that do even ask. And so for me, that was like I was like, oh, wow, that's super aware, because no one does. Yeah.
I wasn't asked if I needed accommodations until I was in college, and I was out of state. It's almost comical, the lack of times people have asked me if I could use an accommodation in my life. And so I think now I'm just hypersensitive to it. And obviously that's what I'm doing for work now, is I'm going into businesses being like, hey, we can do so much better for people. Yeah. Let's start asking these questions. And so realizing that I have so much more to learn still, I think, is causing an insecurity with me.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's good to know, though, because I don't think I would have, like, that brought awareness to me. Right. That was a teaching moment for me. So.
Well, good. We're awesome. Teaching each other and helping each other.
And that's crazy, because I don't think, and maybe why I haven't received much of that. Not saying I want it or need it or do. Right. Like, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Kind of indifferent.
Yeah. Okay. people can do their own, like, that's fine. But I don't think it's physically obvious to anyone unless they know me or ask me to do something where I can't.
Right.
Could
you help us understand, so what are some residual effects from this stroke that you live with today?
So some words actually are still difficult for my tongue. Just the muscles I don't think are 100% back. Like if there's a word with a bunch of consonants in it, I have to like concentrate how to say that.
So like enunciation. But it sounds like you've always struggled with enunciation.
I always have. So. That is true. Yeah, it's funny. I think I have overactive salivary glands as well. So yeah, that's part of the problem. But then it's for me, and I recognize this. I am so lucky because there's so many people, stroke survivors and all types, that have it way worse off than me. Way worse off. Anyway. So mine, thankfully, are all physical.
But don't diminish your experience because of other people's experience. I've always had to remind myself not to compare traumas that way. Right. I am now meeting so many people through the internet that don't have any digits and they have a nub. And so sometimes I think to myself of like, oh, well, at least I have this. And it's okay to still think that, but your experience is just as valid as theirs as well.
I appreciate that. And that's difficult for me.
Yeah. It takes practice.
Okay. But so, yeah, what I do experience still is physical. What I say, and I kind of to understand, I feel like my hip and my shoulder are similar levels of capability. Okay. My knee and elbow is similar, and then my hand and foot similar. And I say my hip and shoulder are like 80% function. So I can still have movement with them and have some strength and whatnot. And then down the road, it's less, like 50% with my elbow and knee. And then my hand and foot are like 10% of what is normal, I would say. And so like doing things like tying my shoes isn't, that's not normal. I wouldn't say difficult now, but that took
You're getting better at it?
Yeah, for sure. Like I can use my thumb as a hook. And
have you ever tried any of these newer like adaptive shoes? Where they have like the, I don't know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The Nikes and then the Reeboks, I think.
I haven't actually. I don't know.
You might be like me where you're almost, are you at the point where you've adapted so much to fit the world that you're kind of like,
I'm good. Right.
Too late.
Yeah, exactly.
And thanks for the afterthought.
Yeah. Part of it, I think, that definitely, like, I'm good. I'm comfortable where I'm at, which is maybe not a good thing. Need to get more uncomfortable.
I will say, I have gotten a bit complacent with some things, and I got called out for it this week, actually. I was at a dinner, and this person was like, why aren't you taking the shot with us? And I, like, had a plate in my hand. I was like eating a meatball or something. Yeah. And so my hands were busy. The next round of shots came around and everyone took it. And I was just kind of, I didn't get another one. So I felt like, oh, I should just stay out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he was like, why aren't you taking the shot? He's like, and I said, well, listen, I've got 6 fingers and there's a lot going on here. I feel like, give me a second. And he goes, I feel like you're making excuses.
Whoa.
And I was like, absolutely. This one was an excuse.
Okay.
Fair.
Valid. Yeah.
And he goes, so why do you think you can make excuses? And I thought, I appreciated this person's personality because they really didn't know me. I think there's something valuable to like help call people out on stuff like that. Granted, he would have done that with anyone. It's just who they are.
Which probably makes it okay.
Yeah, it does, because then they're not treating anyone differently.
No. Yeah.
And it actually opened the conversation for education. And he was like, well, tell me more about that. And why do you think you can make excuses? And I'm like, that's actually a great point. I don't know why I think I can make excuses. It's not hurting anyone but myself.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting. Wow.
So.
Yeah, I don't know how I would have reacted, but I hope it would have been positive.
I think... I kind of just fed off the situation, and I think everyone was kind of like, well, how's she going to react to this? those are the things you get better at.
Okay.
The more like you're like, because I'm to a point where if someone calls me on my shit, I'm okay saying I'm wrong and I can do better or whatever. Years ago, I don't think I would have handled that situation the same. So I do think that like pushing your own mind around your insecurities and things you're uncomfortable with definitely help in those moments. Because then it's not like now I'm thinking about this for the first time. It's like,
right,
you're right.
Huh.
And it's something I'm working through. And then they'll be like, oh, okay. Or like, good.
Yeah.
Now we can move on.
Man, okay. That makes me think of just don't have pockets. It's the same idea in my sense. In my mind, I guess just putting yourself in an uncomfortable position is going to help. And then that's like true of anything, right?
Right. Like you can't grow when you're in your comfort zone.
No, not at all.
But that also doesn't mean like put yourself in those situations more than you can handle or to a point where it's detrimental.
Okay, for me, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, but like putting myself in an uncomfortable position where it exploits the after effects of the stroke is so much more difficult than it would have been otherwise. Like, so for example, if I were uncomfortable situation, the World Cup's going on right now, so I just think if I were to try out for like an elite soccer team, super uncomfortable, right? But I would be okay with that if I were like in that element.
Right.
But right now, if I were to put myself out for something that would like put the stroke on spotlight, not a chance.
And why is that?
I don't know. And I think my own demons, but
do you feel confident in your knowledge about strokes and your experience?
Oh, for sure.
So it's not like lack of confidence in knowledge or anything.
No, and I think it'd be more so like the physical side of things, like to like, I don't know. Like
put yourself on display.
Stand on a stage and that type of thing.
Okay, like public speaking, like.
Not even speaking. I think it's like, I guess more specific. So for example, we went to, the Polynesian Cultural Center.
Yeah.
And in Hawaii.
PCC.
Yeah, the PCC. Yeah. And the guy asked for people to come on stage and volunteers to like go do the drumming. I was like, not a chance in my life would I ever do that, because then it would be so obvious that I've got a physical impairment. Not a chance. So
I can connect to this.
Okay.
I was in the same situation when I went to the Polynesian Cultural Center. Yeah, they're asking for volunteers. My dad ends up going up, but like I'm right there, and I could have. But because I don't want to get up there and have to be like, I can only hold one. Do I hit it with this?
Exactly,
like, then that's going to distract from the whole thing, because then people will be focused on me. I can empathize with that, totally.
Yeah. But I also think, like, I wish...
You deserve to be up there just as much as anyone else.
Oh, I not even like to go up there. Okay. I just wish. I wish I had the mental strength to like. I wish I could just forget the stroke side of thing and then just volunteer. That was like, no way. That's terrifying.
Do you envision that there's a time that you will be able to do that?
Oh gosh, like, I think it'd be awesome, but I don't. It
just seems really far away.
But I don't know.
I feel like I've felt like that too. And now I'm getting up in front of kids at schools and I'm talking about my hand.
Showing it. Which is so cool.
But I will say, I got really insecure when they wanted to come up and start touching it and feeling it. And then I was like taken back to my childhood self again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just because I'm confident in some areas and most of the time doesn't mean it's all areas all the time.
But you've lived that now. So I bet the next time it happens, it will be easier.
Well, next time, it
immediately,
it immediately clicked that, like, I didn't even expect for that to happen. So I didn't have anything ready to say when they asked, and now I do.
Yeah.
And it's those things that make me go into the next one a little bit more secure.
And that makes me think of people that are patient enough for you or with you to navigate those first-time experiences. To like get it down.
Yeah, I also think that my approach to it impacts everyone else's approach to it. And that's not necessarily a popular
not at all
perspective.
so true.
But it's my experience, and that's where I've developed that belief, is because the kinder I get about my hand, the kinder people are to me about my hand.
Huh.
Because everyone's nervous. Everyone's uncomfortable. No one knows the right thing to say. No one, there's that uncertainty of hurting people's feelings. I do believe that most people don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Right.
And I think people just don't, unless people like us are saying, this is how I'd prefer you approach me. No one knows how we'd prefer to be approached or how this situation's handled. Even our friends, like this podcast has helped educate a lot of my friends I haven't had a conversation with about stuff like this.
Cool.
And they've been like, well, I didn't know that you would need something like that. I'm like, that's okay. I never told you.
Right.
You can't
It's
know
not their
unless.
fault, yeah.
Yeah. It's same with your friends who don't have disabilities. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to be like, how can I best show up for you? And then they get to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what other things? So when you're walking, you walk like any other person on the street I've seen, in my opinion.
Thanks. That's taken a while to get used to, or I guess to learn how. Something I think about constantly, like crossing the street in front of cars, like just cognizant of that, and making sure that one, I'm doing it quick enough to get through the street for them, but also like so it's hidden.
Worried about other people's perception of you.
Yeah, huge. I'd say a flaw for sure. Because why does it matter?
I think everyone has that, though.
Yeah.
It just, to what degree?
Right.
And about what?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. But oddly enough, one thing. So with the stroke, I feel like there's so many different things that I've learned that can be translated to or interpreted for just normal life.
The principles are the same.
Just crazy. And I think it's, like, for example, a stroke is just essentially your brain cells are dying. And so there's a lack of communication from your brain down to your body. And just take the principle of communication and apply it to anywhere in life, whether it's in a relationship or like that interruption in communication. It doesn't allow me to function properly physically, but take that principle, that learning bit, and apply it to anything. Like, where is your communication failing? And where is your brain not reaching your body, or where are you not speaking to your, where is
How can we
the
connect
disconnect?
the two?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so those little lessons are, I don't know, something I've been obsessed with and learning. And one of them that I learned recently was, so I started running again.
Okay.
Running, quote unquote.
Hey, you're doing more than me.
No. It just because it was a huge part of my life before.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to like start and learn again. So I went to a neurophysical therapist, and went through. I just want to make sure I wouldn't injure myself further.
Right.
And she's like, oddly enough, like your form, so they call it your gait. I don't know if that's a familiar term, but when you're walking, like you have a normal gait. It looks normal, like your legs bend properly and everything. I don't have a normal gait when I walk. It's not quite there. When I run, though, you can't tell at all. So it's weird that like the more difficult action is smoother, is better.
More momentum.
Yeah.
Right?
Momentum. But I also think there could be a little lesson there. Like,
I agree.
Like, the harder something is, like, it's going to help us down the road or coming back. And so it's actually helped a lot with the walking and everything.
Good. That's a good chain reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And I think, again, that could be applied to different areas of life.
Well, I mean, we're both entrepreneurs, too. So it's like our brains just go there, too.
Yeah, exactly. Doorknobs, shaking hands, that's an awkward one for people, and they extend with the right hand, like,
oh shit. Well, okay,
hand, there we
so
go.
The woman that my parents knew when I was growing up,
Yeah.
her nub is on her right hand, and she has quite the personality, let me tell you. And her stories for me, I was probably like 8 when she told me this story, but she's like, I go to work events with my husband all the time, and if people don't know about my hand, I really, I really try to just like shake their hand with my right hand. She goes, sometimes if I'm being good, I'll just hand my left hand over.
Okay.
But she's like, she has fun with it. Granted, she was born with it as well, and so that's
ballsy.
Yeah, but I think everyone handles everything so differently.
True.
Is what I learned from that. Was like, that won't work for me.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that people out there are pushing the limits, and so that when people come across me, I may not be like the first or most avant-garde person that they've, seen.
Huh. That's, See, for me, it's kind of the same idea as like the stage thing I was talking about, like that personality. Like, it would be easier on me and other people around me, I think, just to have that, but that's not me. So,
and
fine.
You just have to find what works for you.
Right.
If someone else would have told me I had to do it a certain way, no thanks.
Right.
I've had to figure out my way.
That's another thing you talked about in your first podcast that I 100% agree with. So, excuse me, there's a lot of adaptive programs around here. Adaptive programs are just anyone that's got a disability or impairment.
Any sort of adaptation, yeah.
Are
you interested in doing adaptive climbing?
I've looked at it through the front, the gym. I haven't gone yet, though.
They had one this morning.
Oh, crap.
I know. I was like, I saw that too late. But I honestly am afraid to go alone. So if you're in town at their next one, we should.
For sure. I think it's the first Saturday of every month.
Okay. We'll connect later.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, same thing. Like I was thinking, and you talked about this in your first podcast, but and adaptive programs have helped with that, where they kind of teach kind of the overall, like, this is how you do something. So skiing, for example. I'd never been skiing before the stroke, and then I went there and like, this is roughly how you do it, but helping me figure out that I need to do it according to my ability was awesome. Just because they teach people of all ranges, whether wheelchair or
very experienced.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. But then same thing to your point is you just got to figure out how you do it. And again, that's one of those little lessons I think as well that people like. That applies to anyone not with a stroke or not with an impairment or anything. Like, just do it. Figure out how you do it, and then move forward.
I think that's just been like a lost lesson, right? Is that we're all trying to fit into this box,
right?
Instead of like, well, how does it work for you? Like,
think for yourself.
Different lifestyles, different hobbies. Like, no one's gonna look the same, do things the same, and it's silly to pretend like we will.
Right, but we do it.
I try to fight that narrative as much as possible.
And it's important, though, I think.
Like,
I think people need that just to hear it. Like that. So that fight, I think, is important.
Do you find I don't even know how to ask this kindly, and I just want to know, how has this impacted your relationship? Because my limb difference plays a big part in getting to know my significant other and him understanding me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how you got married and then 9 months later both your lives changed. What did that look like?
Yeah, there's one thing I said a bunch. I feel like just the timing of it is just another change in life. So I went on an LDS mission to Mexico, got back from that, and then was at school at BYU, and then had gotten married. And so it's just a bunch of massive changes in a row, and it was just another one in the succession. And that's kind of what life is, right? Just a bunch of changes.
Totally.
So I feel like that was kind of how we saw it. And then all the credit goes to her, though. Her name's Mahala, at Miss Mahala on Instagram. She's great.
Mahala.
Talk with her if you want it. No, she's good.
I'll link her stuff, too, if you want.
But yeah, she is just incredible. And really a lot of the credit goes to her and her willingness, I would say, just to be that patient person and help me navigate those roads and everything.
You found your match.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And yeah, I don't know. And again, I feel fortunate just because there are a lot of people I know of stroke survivors that have lost their spouses since. And
it's a really personal quest, right? Like, they're in the disability community where I'm like most of the time, I feel like That's what feeds my content and everything. But people aren't heroes for being with us.
No.
But they deserve the credit they deserve. You know what I mean? Like, it's not easy, but they're also not, like, these heroes for doing those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's a hard balance, right, to find inspiration versus acknowledging just, this is part of our life, this is our story, and we love each other, and we're getting through it.
Yeah, and I think, I agree 100%. And I think luckily, I think had I been, I guess, how do I say it, but fortunate for me, it was just physical. There weren't any speech issues or cognitive, and I think had those been a factor, it'd be a different story. But she is of the type where she just takes on the burden and shoulders it and works through it, and doesn't complain. Like, I just felt, I'm super lucky.
She seems like a good egg.
She's good. She's really good. Yeah. And she can hold her own. She doesn't need me to say any of that. But, how has it been in the relationship? It definitely has affected things. One of her favorite things, I remember, let's see, I don't remember when she said this. One of the favorite things that we would do before the stroke was we'd just go on bike rides, which I've tried going on a two-wheel bike, but it just balance is a massive issue with the stroke. Oh, that's another thing, after effects of the stroke. Anyway, balance is big, but there's more with that that I'll say.
Okay, we can come back to it.
But yes, bike rides. So there are things that have been affected, but overall life hasn't been affected too much. There's some
just an adaptation, right? Like you said, another big event.
Yeah.
And your life changes as it will.
And she navigates and pushes us to do different things. Like the skiing was 100% her idea, and now we ski. And my level is lesser, but it's still skiing. It's still enjoyable. So,
you know what? Watching the Paralympics just shows me that there's so much more that I can do personally. I'm like, I am taking the easy route.
It's insane. So on that note,
okay.
So when I started running again, my goal, so I wanted to know, like, how paralyzed am I really?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's only a few places you can be assessed for that, and one of them is through the Paralympics. So they just say, like, yes, you are, or you're not. It's like black or white. But to, like, get an actual, like, grade, in a sense, is on, like, the Olympic scale. And so
it's the one rubric we have
that I could find. Yes, and I went to a neuro PT to know. That was like one of my questions: injury prevention, and then to know how paralyzed am I? Like, where do I fit? Who can I compare myself to on an accurate level?
Right.
Just to be able to compete with myself.
Right.
And so there was only this one through the Paralympics, I guess, that she could find. I don't know how much digging she did, but she's the source, so I trusted it.
Right.
Which I'm sure it's trustworthy. Anyway,
it's legit.
I wasn't discrediting her, but so that's the route I went. I actually went to an event and, like, got assessed by the Paralympic Trial Committee and, like, did an event with para-athletes. And it was super cool because at that same event, there were, like, gold medalists. Double amputees running in blades, and like this one girl, I can't remember her name, but she had won the gold medal like 6 months prior.
See, I follow Brenna Huckabee.
Okay.
Do you know her?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. She's so fun, and she's so real.
That's amazing. It's
so
refreshing,
right? Yeah, and I'm over here being like, no, snowboarding's too hard. I think that comment by the person earlier this week did help me realize that, like, I really am my own wall here, right? Like, I'm the one keeping myself from doing all these things that I'm seeing people with less of a hand or less of an arm than me, you know what I mean? And obviously that's just like a easy comparison, but we are our harshest critics. We are the only ones standing in our own way.
Right. And I think, to that point, you definitely need to give yourself more credit.
I do.
Just because look at what you're doing. Look what you built. I mean, physically, but also, like, I mean, you've built It's on the going. It's got momentum.
Like, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I struggle more with my mental illnesses in getting things done than I do my physical impairment.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's something I'm feeling hopeful about. You know what I mean? Like, I have all the things going right now that's helping me get through that, and like I'm seeing a light at the end of the tunnel with my mental blocks, but it wasn't until I started it wasn't until I really felt the effects of my mental illnesses, like PTSD and depression, that my hand became less of an issue for me. And I know that's a bold thing to say, but it's also because I was born this way. You know what I mean? That it's so instinctual, the things that I do day to day. My body was built to be this way. And so when I'm in autopilot, I feel like I have a little bit of like a leg up on amputees because their bodies are so conditioned, you know what I mean? Unless they've had it for years and years. But even then, like, your body from infanthood learns to do things a certain way. And that's like your muscle memory. That's your default.
Yeah.
And I am so fortunate that I'm able to default to that while I'm figuring out all these other things. Because right before my mental health started declining, I really was focusing on like my hand and how to get better and like an easier life around my hand and my limb difference. And it started with changing doorknobs, like the lever doorknobs instead of the round doorknobs. And putting myself in a gun lesson and learning how to shoot a gun and going to the front and climbing. And I was just doing much more of those things. And then I had to kind of pivot and focus on my mental health.
Yeah.
So I'm eager to, now that my mental health is in a bit of a better state, that I can focus on those things again.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised that I had to have a prescription to get a prosthesis. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So when you told me like, oh, there's only like 1 or 2 places I can go to get this assessment, the things in the disability community that we have to do to just like prove ourselves worthy of any sort of help is incredible.
Yeah.
And I get that the prescription is to get that paid for by insurance and things like that.
Sure.
But I had to literally go into a place where no one there has any limb difference and them tell me if I deserve, based on my stories and the way I do things, this prosthesis. How aggravating is that?
Doesn't make any sense.
No. And so they call me and they try to get me to come back in. And I'm like, I'm bored. Until you get someone on your team that can actually understand what I might be going through, I don't want to come back in.
Well, you don't feel important. You don't feel the urgency that you have.
Also, I'm not an engineer. I don't know what I need to tell you to make this better. I just know that I have 4 missing fingers.
Yeah.
And it makes shit hard to do.
Gosh.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you're like, you get to tell me the level of paralyzed I am?
Yeah.
Huh.
I agree. You know, that makes me think of your first podcast as well. I mean, you talked about representation of people with disabilities, even in modeling and things like that. And
little, like, it seems like a big ask.
Oh my gosh.
These days.
Have you
25% of the population identifies as disabled.
Right. No, and stroke is the number 1 cause of disability in the nation.
That's
and I mean that's disability is it's everywhere.
It is.
Anyway.
And we have so many people that love and care about us and would love to support a company that's accurately representing their customers.
Immediately.
Yeah.
I was at Target in the summer and took a picture because there was a billboard and there's a lady that had an amputation below the elbow or at the elbow.
Her name's Madison Tote.
Madison Tote? Okay, I'm going to go follow her.
I think I'm pronouncing your last name right. I'm so sorry. But she's been someone I've been able to connect with on social media too. Not a ton, but like she's paving the way.
Yeah. That's awesome. See, and I saw that at Target, and I was down in Arizona. I took a picture, and then I heard it on your podcast. You're, like, working in that vein. I was like, oh, I got to find that, how you're doing it. I've got to find that photo. But I was like, it's more, and I tell you why I feel like that's important. For me, I mean, if you're a little kid and you're looking up to a role model, to find someone as a role model, I am not going to... So if you're looking to do a podcast, how many podcasts are out there? Millions,
over
right?
2 million.
And so you want to find one that's specific to what you are doing. So you want to find a role model that's specific to where you want to be. I can't look at a role model and I'm taking like a physical person and really see myself in their shoes unless it is someone that's affected in the way that I am. Otherwise, it's not a natural comparison. I don't feel like it's real for me.
I am so weird. I have like wanted to be in front of a camera my whole life, but so insecure about it at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I remember there being those ads on the radio that's like Disney Scouts are coming to your area, blah blah blah, and I'm like, I want to be on Disney so bad. But then would they have to write my hand into the character,
Right.
or would it only be about my hand? Would they only have to film me so my hand's not showing?
Yeah.
Those were thoughts I had as a child because there were no role models in film or anything that weren't like charity cases.
Yep. True. And that's the way
And
it
so
goes.
I'm trying to get out there and be like, we don't need a philanthropic campaign.
No.
We just need people to be
makes you
accurately
feel-
represented. Yeah.
Yeah. See, exactly. And I feel like, what was her, Madison Tote?
Mm-hmm.
I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
And
because
then,
literally everyone of all abilities are wearing those clothes. Why are we not representing that they're wearing those clothes?
it was so cool. And then there's a commercial I saw recently during the World Cup. Same thing, where it was, I don't remember what it was for
I
even.
can't ever remember.
I think it was
her
a
name,
car
but
commercial.
Yes.
Maybe not. Anyway.
She's the first limb different woman on the women's team.
Oh, yeah.
Soccer.
I'm
bad with
She was
names.
in the commercial though. Anyway, and I saw that and I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
Just because it's not out there,
Mm-mm.
and I don't know if there are people like yourself going out there just to like advocate, say like, hey, we need more of us.
You know what? There are, and I think we need more voices because it's only being yelled at to people in the disability community. I feel like I'm only being heard by other limb different people. Like I want to be heard by everyone, right?
Beyond
and
that.
So it doesn't just matter if you know someone who's limb different. It matters if you don't know someone who's limb different, so that when you do come in contact with someone, it's not brand new to you.
Yeah.
Same with stroke survivors. Same with anything. We just need more education so that we can better behave, if you so choose, in society.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I think, I don't know, I think the Paralympics are a really good example of that, to where it shows inspiring feats by people that are at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
But I don't think it needs to be just sports. And that's where I think seeing those models for me was awesome. What you're doing, just what you're speaking to, amazing. Like for me, that's huge. And you need to give yourself more credit. And,
Thank you.
But
honestly, it means a lot to me to have people like you on here who are willing to share their story. My friend Sarah, who came on and talked about Tourette's syndrome, it's just things that aren't being talked about enough. And so obviously we're going to be in the dark if we don't. And if you don't know anyone you can go ask, or you don't have that kind of rapport with them. I love that you offered up the FAST acronym for help, because I am really just trying to make this an educational podcast.
Cool. And I think for me, what gives motivation, so a number of people have said like, hey, you should write a book and that kind of thing. Like, cool, okay, yeah, maybe. I'd love to. Like, I that's always been a dream of mine, even before starting
you should.
But I don't know. Anyway, But like talking to my sister, she's written books and has some on Amazon. She like sent me a screenshot the other day. It's like it's got 700 reviews and stuff. So she's like doing pretty good. But
we'll have to get in contact.
Okay.
Me and her.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, what do you think about this of me writing a book? She's like, absolutely. She's got a son who was born with hydrocephalus. And
what is that?
so it's basically your cerebral spinal fluid can't drain properly, and your head just gets big, I guess, with fluid. So they got to find a way to drain it.
Okay.
And so he was born with that, and she said, I had zero resources. I have had zero contact with people that have lived with it or parents that have children with it. And so I can't, like, how do they live their life? Like, how do they treat their kids? Can he go on a roller coaster? Can he do this, that, and the other? And so for that reason, you should write a book, Ian, just to know how someone with a stroke lives their life. And so,
honestly,
and I think just with the podcast, it's the same idea. So people can know, like you said, living with Tourette's, what is that like, and how do you navigate it?
Yeah.
And just from that alone, I think is huge. Like, everyone's got a story to tell. I firmly believe that. Like, I was talking to a man this morning, an elderly man. He's 89 years old. He worked on the railroad, lived in like 15 different locations. Like, that guy's got some stories for sure. But I think even more so, some of the things that are sometimes overlooked, like the Tourette's,
the
like
day to day.
Yeah, and I think you talked about you kind of had to put your hand aside to work on the mental illness side of things. For me, the stroke happened once. It was August 7th, 2013. But it's something that I relive in a sense. Like, I mentally have a stroke every single day just because of the after effects from it. And I think that stuff is just so much more difficult. It needs that attention so other people can say, oh, I'm not alone. They can relate. And since they're overcoming it or they're living with it, I can too. And so
not
I think
feeling so alone
is everything. Connection in some sort is huge.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, I mean, with the state of the world, a lot of that's coming to light and everything. But I think it just needs to continue and even accelerate. So don't stop, I guess. Yeah.
Well, if I still have some of your time, I have more questions.
Sure. Yeah.
You mentioned it's that day to day, like you relive it. How do you get through that? What are some tactics you've built for yourself?
I don't think I'm that wise in my approach. I don't know. I think one thing that's really helped me is, so I write a lot. Trying to do it daily of just, and that's my way of like meditation, I guess you could say, of writing down my feelings and what I want to accomplish and where do I want to go. And I think that's a big thing, a combination of writing with goals in a sense. And I don't mean like January 1st, I'm going to have $1 million. But I mean like, what do I want to live to be?
Right.
And how do I want to improve myself as a human being? Not really stroke related, excuse me. And I think that helps a lot, just having something to continue to push towards. Those two things for me have been big, just kind of being able to decompress through writing, and then also being able to motivate myself to a degree, to have something to push for. And then also with the stroke things, I mean, every single day there's something frustrating that happens, whether it is opening a doorknob that's round, even though I could do it with my left hand, or carrying groceries, not being able to carry the full load, or different things like that, the simple things.
It really is those things that most other people don't think about that I feel like I get most frustrated with.
Oh my
so it
gosh.
Sounds like you're the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to like punch a wall. It's like, it's, anyway. But they're so instantaneous. Like, they're just a moment. And luckily I don't stew on those.
I was going to say, because if you let yourself stew on those micro moments all day.
And drive yourself insane.
Yeah. That's how bad days get worse.
And I think that is, I mean, because it's so frequent for us, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's frequent for everyone. But it's that little lesson as well that I think should be applied to everything. Like, you've got to, like, you get out of the way and move on. But I think with that, the lesson is set yourself up for success, like getting doorknobs that are going to be easier. Because if you've continual roadblocks, you're going to continue in frustration. And it's just going to be a spiral. And you are going to stew on them because they're still present in your life. You don't learn the lesson of changing them out and setting yourself up for that success.
And I think that's very powerful for our support systems to know for us that, like, listen, especially if it's at someone else's house. But if that's like your in-laws' house or like your parents' house or something where you're going to be there frequently and they really do want to make your life easy as possible, they will make those changes and they will be a bit more observant of those things you get hung up on. Because it took me 25 years to ask my parents to change the doorknobs. You know what I mean? And it took them months after I first requested it for it to actually happen. And as long as I've taken the stance that, like, as long as it is changed, there's no grudge that needs to be held of how long it took or whatever. You know what I mean? But it is those little things that, like, I am so sorry, this might be mean of me, but as soon as a friend breaks a finger or has to be in a cast for some reason, I am like, as long as I know that it's going to be better, I'm like, ha ha ha, what can I help you with?
Yeah.
Like, what insight can I share?
Right,
or like,
exactly.
Oh, great, you get 6 weeks of my perspective.
Yeah, come to the professional. I'll teach you.
And so I'm like, we should be thinking about these things a little bit more intensely when we do encounter them, like the mass public that is functioning at 100% physically. You know what I mean? Like, when you do break your ankle or something, like, be thinking of how many people out there are not able to fully use their bodies. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
And realize how broken, like, your trip to the mall just got harder. Your trip to the grocery store, everything is so made for people who have full working bodies that it takes something like that for them to realize just how broken the system is. Yeah. Or until you're helping someone who's a wheelchair user or, you know, those little things.
Right. Yeah. No, then the awareness I guess the light is shed on the awareness. And I think people's eyes are open to that point. Because, I mean, you hear all the time, you don't realize what you got till it's gone.
Yep.
But it's unfortunate. It takes that to have the awareness.
Yeah.
But
every once in a while, I'll, like, overextend my hand and this muscle or something will literally tear. And it, not, like, too bad, but to the point where it's like, I'm not going to be, like, doing push-ups or anything. It hurts. And I'm like, I need to take better care of myself or, like, be gentler with myself because I already have this ailment. If I hurt it even more, that's, like, more downtime for me. So have you noticed yourself having to, or being rough on yourself or more sensitive?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, I mean, especially on the good side, if I lose that or any damage is done to that, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I should just experience it just to see, but not to. Anyway.
Don't do some Talladega Nights thing where he stabs his leg or anything.
No.
No more ERs.
No more. Gosh. But yeah, no, definitely. Kind of favoring it just to make sure that nothing does go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Rolling my ankle is a constant, so I've got like an ankle brace that I wear like while I'm doing hikes and things like that, a little more intense, but. Yeah, no, there's tons of precautions, I think, and I don't think I take as many as most people would, but it's huge.
Do the people closest to you forget?
Yes. Yeah, I think people have used that even word for word. Oh, I forgot, like, that that there was even anything. Yeah, and I don't think... Yeah, forget. Definitely. I guess not that much. I don't know. It's difficult. See, this is where I feel like I'm in an awkward spot to where I'm not disabled enough for it to be, like, recognized or even, like, And maybe I just have adapted.
You know what?
enough.
That's what's tricky, I think, for a lot of people with disability is it's such a blanket term.
Yeah.
And there's so many different kinds and severities.
Right.
That I think it's one of the harder things for people to identify with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 100%. I feel that. Like, I don't know.
Sometimes I'm like, I don't think I should be considered disabled because I'm missing 4 fingers.
Well.
But do you know what I mean? Like,
no, I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't get, that's the weird thing. Most of the people around me, and I'd say I take this as a more of a piece, like a good thing on a positive light, that I'm not, I guess, looked at or any, like, treated, everything's just normal, which for me it's definitely not, especially in my box here in my brain, just because I know.
You're hyper aware.
Oh,
so that other people don't have to be.
Yeah. And so for example, running, I used to go for hours on runs, and it'd just be time to check out and just like
shut your brain off.
Not a chance. Like, I'm thinking about every single step, like what is on the road, everything. Like, I have to think about each individual muscle. Like, is my calf firing? No, I don't have a calf that works. My quad, sure, yeah. Hip, cool. So like, it's the same, just the hyper awareness, and I think a lot of it is so people don't have to shoulder that burden.
Yeah.
For me. Which, I don't know.
I also would imagine that our culture puts a pressure on you as a man to be hyper masculine and like fend for yourself sort of thing. And so, I mean, I would assume that's how you grew up. If you grew up in the United States,
yeah,
being taught, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I could imagine that would be difficult to fight through too, of like asking for help.
Oh yeah, that was like a goal of mine for 2022, which didn't really happen, but asking more for help and receiving it, because I don't. And I think that's, culture for sure. I think it's also familial to more degree or greater degree. Not easy for me at all. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I also think
I should do it more.
Especially if you're like newly asking for help, when people are used to you not asking for help, it's an adjustment on both ends.
Yeah.
Is what I've found out. Is like, I don't know. Like I said, I grew up in a fiery family. So when I'd ask my dad, hey, will you get me a glass of water? Obviously, I can go get myself a glass of water. Right. He's like, what, are your legs broken? You know what I mean? So that sort of thing. Like, you do things for yourself.
Yes.
You get it done. Like, we're all doing things around the house.
Right.
So I think it took me a few tries asking for help, like opening a bag or cutting food. Particularly is hard for me. Having to articulate to these people that I'm done pushing myself past the limit I should be pushing myself, and that maybe I haven't been vocalizing what I need, and that vulnerable conversation was enough to keep me from asking for help from the people like closest to me. I was able to ask for help for people I just met or newly been around much easier because I didn't have to have that conversation. Right. And that was a big realization for me, to be like, and I also needed to offer up some information in that conversation with them, not like, you have been neglecting me, you have been ignoring me, or any of these things. It's not that, and they haven't been doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
Because when I had one conversation and I didn't mention those things, it does come off as like, you've been doing things wrong this whole time, and now we need to change things.
Well.
That's not what it's about.
Right.
It's, I'm realizing I've been doing too much. And if I don't want arthritis by the time I'm 35, I just need to do some things differently. Yeah. Can you help me with that?
And that probably, like, no more questions asked. Like, no. Absolutely. And like, over eager, anything you need.
And again, if they forget or whatever, that's fine.
That's fine.
We can remind. And I don't know, I think having to rely on people also offers up rejection for me. And so that's hard as well. So I'm like, I don't want to be rejected. And now am I too difficult to have around, or?
Yeah.
You know.
That. Yep. Oh, yeah. Gosh. And that, like, yeah. Anyway. I agree. And in that, if it does, so if someone, and maybe it's not a rejection per se, or like if you go to ask for help or you try to do something on your own and it doesn't go well, and then they realize, oh, I should have been helping. That for me almost feels like it's more of like a personal rejection. Like, I'm not going to put myself in that place ever again. Does that make sense? So instead of like so I won't ask for help. And I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to go do it. Like for the groceries, for example. Like, I can get all the groceries. That's fine. Load them all up. And then I drop a bag. I should have asked for help. So from now on, I'm not going to even put myself in that position type of thing. And so that's like...
Avoidant.
Avoidant.
Yes.
That's the word. Yeah.
I am very good at that.
It's bad.
Especially when it's protecting me emotionally.
Yeah.
I will stay far away from
Avoiding
that
embarrassment, insecurity. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I think full circle, that's kind of the stage PCC feel, like avoidance of the insecurity. And
if I can just avoid that situation, I will be safe over here.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happened.
But then, I mean, is that robbing ourselves of growth? Is it robbing yourself of?
I don't think so, because I do think that growth comes when you're able to handle that situation.
Okay.
I don't think growth comes from being in a hard situation that you're unable to handle at the moment. I think that's just more detrimental.
Yeah.
So, but again, you can apply that principle anywhere, right? So like, just because you want to be confident at math doesn't mean you can just show up to this math class and do well. You have to you have to be ready for that, and you have to do practice quizzes or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, to get to that moment that when you're there and it is still overwhelming because you're not going to be comfortable,
right,
but you're able to handle it, and you know yourself, and you know your resources, which would be like your strategies, your go-to phrases that seem safe and helpful, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I've been in therapy for too long, but if you have like all of these things to set you up for that, then I think you can do the best. But I just don't think like throwing someone in when they're not ready would be beneficial.
Yeah, I like that. But I think, setting yourself up for success, and not just with the physical things, but with the emotional things as well. I don't think that's something I've spent too much time on. Thinking of how to navigate that, and I think that is actually probably what holds me back a lot, so that would be good. I think another thing with that is it made me think of, he's talking about like, how do I get through those day-to-day issues, the little trials. I think gratitude is huge. Part of my writing is that every single day, just what is it that I'm, just a little gratitude it goes so far in just keeping you grounded in where you're at and whatnot. It's difficult at times, but I think that alone can see you through those dark, tough times of not being able to open the doorknob or whatever it be. For me, that's been really big.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can I ask some things that you're proud of yourself for recently?
Oh, gosh.
I'll share some of mine, too,
Thanks.
To be fair.
Okay. This is interesting because I actually sat down and thought, like, what is it that I'm grateful for, or not grateful for? What is it that I'm proud of so far in my life? It was actually really tough because I don't think I've done a lot of things that I want to, in a sense. Like, I haven't quite gotten there yet.
Okay. Still a lot you want to do.
It's probably too much, but the running thing for me was a really, really big one. Just a personal mental hurdle. Was really big. Physical side of things, that was huge. It was everything. So
good. I'm proud of you for running again.
Oh, thanks.
I think that would be very hard to go try and do something that you loved to do before and do it now. And so I'm really proud that you're sticking with it and doing it. And
I appreciate it.
You honestly, when you talked about running, you lit up.
Really?
So.
All right.
For what that's worth.
Cool. Yeah, no, that one's good. I'll think of another one. What about you? You said you had.
I'm proud of myself. Here come the emotions. For asking for help with my mental health. The holidays are a real bitch for me.
Okay.
And on top of family dynamics not being exactly what I would love, and not taking care of myself, like getting out in the sun every day and, just those little things that really do help your mental health when you're self-employed and working alone most of the time. Like, it just gets isolated. And so I found myself being like, oh, I'm not doing very well. And then the holidays came around and I was like, okay, something needs to change. So I've been having my mother live with me for a little bit to help me get back on my feet.
That's awesome.
I am proud of myself for saying it out loud and being honest, because it was pretty, I'll say it was embarrassing to have to do at first. And now I'm like feeling so much better and have this game plan, and I'm really feeling optimistic about like waking up every day. And I know that sounds silly, but like, it was not that way a few weeks ago, and I'm proud of myself for setting my pride and ego aside and just doing what I needed to do and accepting it. And if anyone else out there is not doing well and needs extra support, it is okay, and it is not shameful. And living alone is hard.
Huge.
And listen, you know what you need best. We all know what we need for ourselves, within ourselves. You just got to tap into it. So
that's awesome. That's excellent. Good.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
One more each.
That is huge and not easy.
No.
At all. Something I'm proud of. I think this is part of the issue is I don't feel like I am where I thought I would be in life.
It's hard comparing ourselves, to others.
Brutal. Which is probably the worst thing ever, to compare yourself. But
you're living out of a van with your wife and 3 cats. We hardly touched on that.
Oh my gosh, that is a trip. Yeah, that is actually awesome to be able to. So we have a home, a townhome that we're renting out, and that's definitely something worth being proud of.
Good.
Just because that whole getting to that point was difficult, and now the van's winterized, and we're staying with family right now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we've traveled for the summer, and my wife is a photographer. She does like outdoor adventure photography, so we went over like 13,000 miles this summer just driving, just on a big loop from like
all over the country.
I stayed out west mostly, so we
Okay.
went from here to Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, back up to Montana, Canada, Washington, Oregon, Arizona, Utah, California. If I mentioned that. So yeah, out west.
Cool.
And then
There's plenty to see out west.
oh my gosh, that's beautiful. So yeah, just doing photos, and then with the cats, which has been wild. Yeah, just a little Sprinter van, and that is definitely, because that was not easy.
No.
To make this final decision on, and that's something that's been successful and
good.
Successful in the sense that we did it and accomplished it.
Yeah,
and,
took the plunge.
Took the plunge, exactly. And it's been fun. Really good memories. Tons of photos.
Good.
So, but that's definitely something worth being proud of. Proud of, I think probably one of the biggest things is proud of my marriage, and proud of where that's at and the direction. And it definitely has not been easy. We've been married 9 months from the stroke. 9 years now.
Wow.
And so it's been a long time. 8 after the stroke, and now it's just life. And it's been a trip for sure. But
Good.
super proud of it. Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Thank
I
you.
mean, We met in 2020, end of 2020 or something. Yeah. It's been fun to watch your journey and through social media, and just honestly been dying to have this sit down since we met. So
thank you.
Thank you
I appreciate
it. I'm
glad it actually happened. And,
yeah.
And look up to you, and I'm going to continue following and listening. So thank you.
Well, I just am thrilled to have you as a guest. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
I think we learned a lot.
We'll see. Thanks.
Okay. I always brain fart.